Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Aftermath Hours, the weekly podcast from Aftermath.site, a worker owned, reader supported website about video games, the internet, and everything that comes after. Aftermath is for the moment fully reader supported, so if you like what you hear, you can subscribe on our website, which is, again, Aftermath.site. Or if you don't have a lot of money right now, which I know many are struggling, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen to podcasts. I am Nathan Grayson, and today I'm joined by Chris Person
Hey, what's going on?
and special guest from hailing from The Guardian, Keza MacDonald.
Hello, guys. It's nice to see you.
It's great seeing
Yeah,
you.
yeah, we got
We
way
are, of
back with
course, old.
Keza
We are, of
from
course,
the.
old work buddies from the
Yep,
Kotaku, from way 10 years ago. I worked
yeah,
out.
damn. Um, but yeah, because Keza used to run Kotaku UK back in the day, which in my head I always pronounce as Kotaku.
Kotaku, yeah, I believe was the
Yeah,
canon pronunciation. Best job I ever had. I loved it.
wow, better than The Guardian.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I'll just
tell
say
them.
it.
I'm gonna tell them you said that.
Yeah, tell my boss.
Um, but yeah, Keza is joining us today because she has a new book coming out next month.
I do. It is about Nintendo. It's called Super Nintendo. I'm going to give you the American subtitle. They've given it a different subtitle in America. It is the game-changing company that unlocked the power of play. Because you guys love stuff with the word power in it. Here it is. That's the US version.
Yeah, wait,
Oh,
how did you come to the conclusion that it needed a different subtitle in different
My
regions?
the American publisher made me. It wasn't my decision. The UK one is how one Japanese company helped the world have fun. You see, so it's
Uh,
a slightly different vibe. This is the UK one. It's a
yeah, or is
blue
this more aggressive, huh?
blue
I do like the
interpretation. Yeah, I
UK
mean it's my
cover
name's.
more. I do like the UK cover slightly more. The other one feels a little blocky. They're both good.
Yeah,
That just feels
I do like
cleaner.
them both.
It's cleaner to me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about the American the cover is that my name is really big on it, so there is that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
obviously counts
yeah,
in
yeah,
my
that's
favor.
fair.
Yeah. But yeah, it's
um,
out in America. It's out on February 5th, and in the
hmm,
UK, it's out a week later on the 12th. So very soon now.
yeah, no kidding. I mean, how you feeling with it just around the corner?
I've been through the. I mean, you'll know this, Nathan, but writing a book sends everyone completely insane. So
Hmm.
I've been through the insanity of actually writing it, and I've been through the insanity of editing it, and then I've been through the insanity of recording an audiobook of it, which involved me just sitting by myself essentially in a studio, trying not to make any rustling noise and talking to myself for a week.
Hmm.
So now that I've done all that, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm quite proud of it. I think it's Nintendo is a really key company if you want to understand like what video games are about, and I think it's a book I've always kind of wanted to read, so I'm
Hmm.
really pleased to have been able to do it. I'm feeling good about it now.
Yeah, I'm surprised you recorded the audiobook. I did not. I was like, I don't want to sit in a room for that many hours and read my own writing while thinking like, oh, I could have done that better, or oh, that's a weird sentence, or man, what was I thinking? Like that just
Yeah.
sounds like my own personal hell.
Yeah, there were certainly times when there were times when I was like, this sentence is just horrible. It's a run-on sentence, only a few times. And there were also, but the thing is, if they got in an actor to do it, I'd be like, well, good luck with all the Japanese pronunciations of everyone and everything in the
Oh,
book. Like, it would have been so hard, and all the game names and stuff. Like, it would have been really difficult for people
Could
who
they
weren't, fully
say
conversant.
no? None of them could say Doki Doki Panic. They can't. They
I
can't
mean
think
Not
of.
that's
possible.
entry level stuff. If they fucked up Doki Doki Panic, it's like
No,
get out,
that's
you're fired.
yeah. You would
Yeah,
get your ass would get to the door if you couldn't say Doki Doki Panic.
yeah. I mean, Hidemaru Fujibayashi is a bit more of a tongue twister that appears a
Well,
lot. He's the guy who does Zelda now, so there's things like that in it that I was like, I'm gonna do it. I feel like I'm gonna do it. I did have
Yeah.
to record like a big sample because they were like, no, we're gonna get an actor, and also they said Americans wouldn't be able to understand a Scottish accent,
What?
but
and I
you
was
have
like,
like a
look, I
very
don't sound,
posh. You have like a
don't I?
yeah. Yours is like the sort of like not the like the fucking hard to understand Scottish accent. There's
No,
multiple.
I don't. Yeah, yes, there's this variation. I mean, I'm from the posh part of Scotland, which is Edinburgh, so like I do reckon I'm fairly intelligible to most people, as opposed
Right.
to coming from deepest Paisley, where when they put subtitles on the TV, that kind of accent. But yeah, they were happy with the sample chapter, so I did get to read my own work, which I was happy about.
Hell yeah. But yeah, I guess also just to begin, Why did you decide to write a book about Nintendo? Especially because I think like, there have been others, but I guess not one quite so recent. And so, what made you think like, yeah, now's the time to write one?
So I was thinking a lot because I've been doing this 20 years now, like professionally. I got my first
Mhm.
job on a games magazine when I was 16. And so I was thinking a lot when I was a couple of years ago when I was pitching this book. I was thinking about why I still do this and why I still play games and what it is about games that got me into them at first, but then also what keeps me in them. And a big answer to both of those is actually just Nintendo. And I've read, I think, most of the things that have been written about Nintendo at this point during, research, but also just because I'm very interested in the company and I always kind of voraciously consumed anything that I could about Nintendo. And a lot of the kind of really great works about Nintendo are from the 90s or like 2000. Chris Kohler's brilliant book
Mm.
is about the Japanese games industry in general, but the Nintendo stuff in that is, it's old now. And
Mhm.
David Sheff's book, which I think had an amazing title like How Nintendo Enslaved Your Children or Made Them Screed Addicts. Um, that came out in the 90s, and it's like a really in-depth story of, you know, how Nintendo won the kind of SNES versus, Mega Drive war. But there hasn't really been something about Nintendo like post Wii, post DS, post Nintendo Switch that kind of takes in the whole like history up to this point of the
Mm.
company.
Yeah, which
And
for some
also,
people that's their whole life with Nintendo.
literally, like
Yeah.
I went out to Japan to see the Nintendo Museum when it opened, and like a lot of the people I met who were there for that opening day were like influencers who were, the Wii was their first console, they got it as kids,
Right.
and they're people in their 20s, like actual adults who grew up with this era of Nintendo, and I also think like we're approaching the end of an era of Nintendo now, where the kind of architects of the company as we know it, like Shigeru Miyamoto, Eiji Aonuma, all these people, um, some of them are already no longer with us. Like Iwata passed away, obviously,
Yeah.
and Gunpei Yokoi passed away a while back. So, but this is going to be the last generation of Nintendo hardware that any of these people who made the original Zelda, Pokemon, Metroid, etc., it's going to really be the last stand for them, and we're moving into
Mhm.
a kind of new chapter. So I felt like it was actually a good time to write a kind of cultural history of Nintendo.
I'm actually curious about that element of it because like I mean you have a Switch 2. Uh,
Uh-huh.
there it's like it's an interesting machine because it's like it's sure competently made, you know what I mean? But like the
Hmm.
original Switch had like every console had that like zhuzh to it, even if it was bad. You know, like even the
Yeah,
Wii U had like a
yeah,
wild like how that shit handles wireless is like still very interesting and actually still very current technology that people kind of forgotten and like they didn't forget and bring it back, but it's like you're seeing a lot of wireless video transfer stuff kind of being like, damn, was the Wii U right on that? Because it's not like Bluetooth. It's like something different. It's like a weird like other thing. This is the first one where it's like, oh, I guess that's nice. You know,
yeah.
I guess like the GBA, like the GBA to GBA ones, but like it's all been iterative, and this feels like an entire switch number jump that feels iterative.
Yeah, and like Nintendo has like often alternated between like wild stuff and being more iterative. So you got like the NES and the SNES are essentially
Yeah,
iterations of each other, although they look very different. And then the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Advance SP. There was there was an iterative thing there, and then obviously then you have like the Wii and the Wii U, which were related to each other. But there have been kind of alternating periods of like slightly more conservative and slightly more out there uh, kind of technology from Nintendo, but kind of a
yeah,
pattern kind of emerges over time. But yeah, the Switch. I honestly, my personal theory is that the Switch 2 was ready years ago, but they held it back
yeah.
because of the pandemic.
I think
And I think
the pin the what do you call it, the actual GPU number, if I remember correctly, when like Chinese hardware manufacturers like when they pull that apart, they're like, oh, this was like made in like 2021 or something like that, or
Hmm.
2020 or 2019 or something. I forget the exact year, but it was like way way older than we expected it to be.
yeah, and like quite a lot of Nintendo's games that have been released in the last few years have been on the shelf waiting. Like Princess Peach Showtime was apparently ready many years ago.
Huh.
As have some of the remakes slash updated versions of the kind of retro games um, that have come out on in the last few years. They've been ready for a while, but they've been spacing it all out and also watching the market after COVID, I think, because it did screw everything up real bad. So yeah, it feels like the Switch 2 is an interesting. Nintendo console, and that it does feel like a break from the norm, right? It's more iterative than I think maybe anything they've done before. But if it had come out 4 years ago as a, hey, look, it's a nice upgrade to the Switch, I think maybe that wouldn't feel so significant, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
I do. I also think that there's like, I don't know if this is obviously extremely subjective, but there's a kind of ennui about it that I've been feeling, and I've
A
been thinking about
Nintendo
the
on Wii.
Nintendo. There's a Nintendo
Ah,
ennui. God damn, we're gonna have to clip
that's
that.
the next one.
Um, no, it's like everybody went out and bought it that wanted to buy it when it came out, and then I think my understanding is even though it sold the best of the year, the PS5 kind of like dipped back up during the holidays, and to
Yeah, it didn't do
me,
as well as it was supposed to in the
it didn't do
holidays
as well as
period, I
supposed to
think.
because like if we're
Yeah.
being honest with ourselves, the games are kind of mid. Like the Mario Kart's got a great sound. The soundtrack in Mario Kart's so good. The Mario Kart World soundtrack is so good, but it's like nobody gave a shit about that open world. Same with like Metroid. Like, why are you putting this in an open world? It's like a fine Metroid game.
Well, they had to like reset development on that, and I guess they were like locked in at that point. They're like, we just gotta, release what
Yeah.
we have come up with, and even though it feels a little bit dated
Yeah,
and like things have changed, we're just like, well, that's what we're doing.
like Kirby's
That should also have come out 4 years ago, like for
Kirby's
sure.
Kirby's like interesting, but it's also like kind of weird. You know what I mean? It feels like a strange little passion project, and like the what do you call it? The Donkey Kong game. I've known some people who were like, I regret that
Or
Bonanza,
I finished it.
Bananza, as I
They
which is
finished
one of
continually
the
think it is.
best names they've ever given a Donkey Kong game. Like Bonanza, it's great. It's he's a monkey.
Really good. Yeah.
But it just it
But
feels
But I
yeah,
like
was writing it as
it feels
I
like
go on, Chris.
the most like going through the numbers. Like I know a lot of people who are like if I talk to people who own a Steam Deck, they're like, I play that thing every fucking day. I have not played a console that regularly since the DS or the PlayStation 1. Like that is how regularly people who have fuck with Steam Deck, which is granted a much smaller install base, do because there's just a million things to play on that thing. And there are a million things to play on the Switch 2, but they're Switch 1 games. And you already have a Switch 1.
Yeah, man. The thing is, you know who doesn't have a Switch One? Children. Like
Yeah.
there are so
yeah.
many children for whom this is something that I came to realize because when I was a teenager, I was like so over Nintendo. I was like, no. I mean, I remember the DS was going to come out. I'm like, that looks stupid. This whole thing is stupid. Nintendo's done. Like I still,
They were
I was a
so
big Nintendo
cooking with
fan, so I
that.
had hope. They were, but like at the time, and I was in a I say newsroom, it was a crap little office above a TK Maxx. But in my first job, like the games magazines that we were working on, was Games TM, RIP to a real one. But everyone was just literally laughing out loud at the Nintendo DS reveal, and then the Wii was even like people. It was risible. Like people were. I mean, I remember being like, I don't know, I think this could work, but I think people were so not convinced. And then there's been lots of times in Nintendo history where, those of us who are a bit older and have maybe seen this before, and we're maybe a little bit more jaded, where we've been like unimpressed, but then it's gone on to sell a bajillion copies to slightly younger and less jaded people. So I do wonder with the Switch too. Like my children think Bonanza's the best thing in the history of time.
Yeah.
They love it. And they also love Pokemon. I am bored of Pokemon, but now that my children love it, I'm like, okay, I'm getting
Yeah.
into it again
Yeah,
because I see it through their eyes.
This is
It's
by
kind
the
of
way.
sweet.
This is by the way how I'm discovering that the British version of TJ Maxx is called TK Maxx because of a copyright infringement.
yeah.
Yeah. It's one of
Donkey
those
Kong
random little
Max.
things. One of those random little matrix glitches, slight changes.
I also like that they literally like fuck what we call it. What's the next letter?
Yeah, they didn't even. It wasn't TZ Max, just TK. But yeah, that was my
Well, they're
my
trying
first
to
job.
figure
I
out
was.
what it's going to be. It's TK Max.
Yeah.
We
And
also
they
don't do
just
the.
never got rid of the placeholder.
We also don't do TK in the UK. That's like a very American thing that I learned when I was working for American companies. Like everyone would write TK for their placeholder text.
What do you do instead? What's your placeholder?
Just often
Oh.
like those three things that are next to each other. The things like if you've got your hands on the keyboard, you're like H S H S J H S.
Yeah. Somebody
Right,
already
right.
typed it out. Yeah. Okay.
Huh.
Yeah, that.
Huh? But yeah, so on the subject of the book, Nintendo is obviously a company with a vast history, more vast than most people know, considering it goes back to the fucking like 1800s.
Literally.
But how do you structure a book about a company with such a vast history? Like, what do you focus on?
So I decided to do it by game. And the reason I decided to do that was because I was trying to write something a little bit more of a cultural history rather than a technological history. And I thought if I did it by console or chronologically, then it would be less interesting for me to write. So I did. I picked basically, I think, 12, possibly 13 games, starting
Mhm.
with Ultra Hand, which was like the first like grabber toy that was
Mm.
Nintendo's first kind of hit in the like set in the 70s. And then moving all the way through, like obviously Mario, Zelda, obviously Metroid, obviously Pokemon, but then also Nintendo Labo, and a few other, Smash Bros is a big chapter. And the idea was that each of these games, like, firstly, it's interesting to see how they were made and who made them and where they
Mhm.
came from. But then it's also a way for me to get into talking about something else that I think is important. So, like, for Metroid, of course, it's interesting to know about how Metroid was made. There's lots of really cool detail, from 20 years worth of interviews over the years about how and why these
Hmm.
things were made. But then also it's a way to talk about how female game characters have evolved over the time that Nintendo has been doing games. The difference
Yeah.
between Samus Aran in the 80s and Samus Aran now. And for Nintendo Labo, it's a way to talk about how Nintendo approaches hardware design and how they do these weird little gadgets, and then talking about like the Vitality sensor and Rob, the little NES robot, and all these other weird, strange gadgets that Nintendo's made. So, and then Animal Crossing ended up being a way to talk about essentially the internet, like how the
Yeah.
internet changed. But then also about the pandemic and how the pandemic sort of like changed people's views on gaming, and how valuable it can be, just for your mental health, apart from anything else. So yeah, each I structured it around games, partly because that felt interesting for me to write, but then also because it's a way to, your favorite one is going to be in there, right? But then there's also probably something you didn't know about how it was made, and then maybe you might see that game in a different way after you read the chapter about it.
Mhm. Yeah. What was your favorite chapter to write or research or both?
I really enjoyed writing the Smash Bros. One because I think Masahiro Sakurai is just such a dude. Um, I
He's
really,
so
really enjoy that
cool.
guy.
Like
He is
I
so cool.
this is why like Kirby Air Ride is probably the best game on that fucking system right now for me. At least just because it's just like I don't even know if that's an enjoyable game. I just like this. It's so clearly his is so
It's him, yeah.
clearly just doing all of the Smash Brothers UX. Just like even how the things finish or just like Kirby.
Just throwing everything. And
Yeah.
like he's got such, because obviously he really helpfully, right as I was, just as I, like, after I signed this deal for the book and when I was starting to research, he started doing his YouTube channel, where so Masahiro Sakurai has a YouTube channel where he just goes really in depth on the most esoteric things, about game design and from his
Mm.
career. And I spent hours and hours and hours just watching his YouTube channel and having a grand old time listening to him. But I interviewed, Sakurai, I think in 2019, maybe 18, and it was one of the best interviews I've ever done with anyone. I just had such a great time chatting to him, and he told me he has like so many thousands of video games in his house that, they're under the bed, they're all over the walls, they're crammed everywhere. Like his house is just like a video game museum, and he plays games. And he said, like, I don't even just play good games. He's like, you have a lot to learn from bad and middling games. He's like, everyone who made every single one of these thousands of games that I own wanted someone to play it, and I want to be that guy who plays it. I just think that's a really great
He's
way to be.
right. He's fucking right. But
Yeah.
there's a lumpiness to his design too that's very clearly like Kusoge inspired. It's very like, gotcha-y but not exploitative, like fun. It like I don't know. There you do learn. He's right. You do learn a lot from those weird ones, and he has all the weird. He'll throw weird shit in there, and it's like it's always really
He's very
charming.
maximalist.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's such a
Yeah.
maximalist games that he's just like throw literally everything. I mean,
on very
he said
simple
that when he
games.
announced, yeah, like simple structures, but
Yeah,
the maximalism comes from the sound design, the
yeah.
visual over, and I just think it's, I just like the way he thinks about games. And I also was very surprised to learn like just how integral he was to not just Smash Bros, but actually Nintendo's history, going back to HAL Laboratory and the
Mm.
Kirby days. Like he's a kind of unique guy, and he was a unique story. So I really liked writing that one. That was one of my faves. And then another one I enjoyed was, actually just Zelda, because Zelda is my favorite game series, and I ended up writing way more than I needed about Zelda and then cutting it back. But in writing a lot about Zelda, I finally came to a better understanding of why it is that's my series, and I felt like I understood why I liked it better after 30 years of thinking about it. And so
Yeah.
that was a cool realization to come to as well.
Did you, in the process of writing the chapter about Zelda, especially, did you learn anything new that you did not previously know about Zelda? Something that surprised even you, someone who is obviously very into the series.
There was a time in the making of like the first Zelda where, well, I didn't know actually that they were making the first Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda at the same time. Like, imagine those being the same
That
three
is,
kind of lead
yeah.
developers made those two, like Nintendo's first three game credits really were Donkey Kong, Mario, and Zelda, which is wild. But I learned that the three people who were making those two games, so that was Miyamoto, Takashi Tezuka, and the programmer whose name I believe was Nakamoto, they were known internally in the company as the Manzai Trio. And the Manzai duo in Japanese, they're like a comedy duo who
Yeah.
riff off each other. So I got this absolutely charming image in my head of like young Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka and this, and Nakamoto all just sort of like, cracking the office up as, as a comedy trio and then making these amazing games.
Wait,
So yeah, I
who's
got
the
a real kind of,
bokeh?
say again.
Who's the bokeh? Who's the bokeh? What is it? Bokeh and Sukomi?
I think that we can speculate.
We're getting into real Manzai hours here.
Yeah, I was like, what? I was not expect. I was not expecting the depth
Yeah.
of. I should have expected from you a depth of
Yeah.
esoteric
Uh-huh.
Japanese comedy terms knowledge. To be honest, I don't know why
Okay.
I'm
Which one
surprised.
of you is the bokeh and which one of you is the no?
Mm. But I ended up learning because, as well as like many years of interviews with various Zelda creatives, I mean Nintendo creatives over the years. Also, there's this amazing treasure trove of information in Satoru Iwata's Iwata Asks interviews. So he sat down and
Hmm.
interviewed basically every creative team who made any Nintendo console or game during his whole tenure. He sat down and did like a really lovely in-depth interview about what they were doing and why. And then that's all up on Nintendo's website from, the early 2000s onwards. And it's a trove of information. It's so good. Like those interviews are so good. You get all these lovely little tidbits of, insight into what it's actually, where these games came from. And you get the impression that Miyamoto was a total hard ass as well. Like he was going around like, canning games left and right. Like people would be on the floor, after he'd passed his judgment. You really kind of you saw a different side of Miyamoto as well through those interviews. I found that very interesting.
It's like when you figure out that like Hayao Miyazaki's the mean one. Like it's like Hideki Anno's the really sad one, and Miyazaki's the one that like chain smokes and like just dresses you down. It's just like I don't know. It's
Right.
a
Yeah,
weird it's a weird company. I don't know. It's a strange company because it has these like really these things that I find genuinely charming, and like one of the few companies that has a modicum of magic left when so many of games are literally like, okay, which iPad would you like to put this on, or which small PC would you like to put this on? And they still have a little bit of that, and it's I don't know, but they're also really weirdly, they can be litigious at times. They're a strange company.
yeah. Tell me
Yeah.
about it. Yeah,
That's what I was
this is
about
the
to
thing
bring
that.
up is like
Yeah.
their stance on fan games and stuff and how quickly they go after almost anybody who is like using their IP in ways that they don't approve of, which generally just means using their IP.
Yeah.
Yeah, like at all in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find because the thing is like a lot of I don't know about I don't know about you guys, but at the moment the game speed feels a little bit depressing sometimes. There's
Mm-hmm.
quite a lot
Yeah.
of quite bad stuff going on, and so with Nintendo, because I was writing about Nintendo for a year and a bit. It was a kind of place where I could escape to, where I was like, there isn't that much bad to say about Nintendo, but you're right. The one thing about Nintendo that really kind of, isn't flattering to the company at all is its extreme litigiousness.
Yeah.
The way they go after not just pirates, but anybody who's doing anything at all, as you say, including fan games. Hopefully not including books. I guess we'll see. If they did sue me, it'd probably be quite good for my sales. So,
I think you're
but
fine.
they are a massively litigious entity. Most Japanese companies are,
Yeah, that's the
but
thing.
Nintendo, yeah, and also like another thing that because people stay at Nintendo for such a long time, right? They have decades and decades long careers. And something that was pointed out to me at one point was like, it's kind of amazing how Nintendo doesn't do the hire, fire, get everyone in for a project, then shrink down to a skeleton, then expand again, then shrink down. And that's kind of how they preserve their institutional knowledge. Although that is true, no Japanese company really does that because of Japanese employment law.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So although it is definitely a part of why Nintendo it manages to retain staff and institutional knowledge, and that's kind of why its games are so good in a lot of ways. But then also it is a byproduct to a certain extent of Japanese employment law.
Yeah, I
Yeah. Well,
get
there's that whole like famous thing that people point to of like Iwata taking a big pay cut to like avoid layoffs and all of this. And people are like, oh yeah, it's because they're so magnanimous because Iwata was such a good boss. It's like, no, it's also because the laws dictated that they couldn't just cut everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is it. Like,
Yeah.
there is an element, of course, of like, I mean, I think it's in contrast to how things work in the rest of the games industry. It's understandable. You look at that and you just think, wow, that's, it's amazing. It's so like, it's so magnanimous. It's so kind. But like, it is also a byproduct of actual labor law.
I
Yeah.
think also
Um,
we get thrown off a little bit because Sony's kind of a transnational company more than it is like a distinctly Japanese. I mean, it is, but it isn't. You know what I mean? It's this like
Not the way it
weird.
was in the 2000s. It's kind of
No.
changed now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's very much like if you look at the big releases for the PlayStation, it was like fucking a lot of Western developed stuff, and I think that in many ways it feels closer to like how weird Sega was in this own weird way, where it's like it wasn't. It's a kind of a strange outlier in terms of like co-development and like. But yeah, you deal with literally any other Japanese company when it comes to copyright law, and they will fucking kill you. They will shoot you with a
They will.
gun. They will like
They'll chop off your
old
hands. Like,
old if the company is like older than 5 years, they are like if they it was just like if it's like old Kyoto shit, they'll like break your legs.
yeah. I mean, this is what was super interesting as well. Like, something I didn't know really anything about before was like Kyoto culture in the 1800s, which I had to learn a bit about to understand the kind of founding years of Nintendo. Obviously, it was founded in 1889 as a card game company, right?
Yeah.
But it was really very, Kyoto was completely cut off, like culturally and business culturally. It was very much like its own thing. They weren't really paying much attention to what was happening in the rest of Japan, like right through to the turn of the century, really. Like all the way in Nintendo's early years, they weren't really worried about being behind technologically, in the Gunpei Yokoi times when the Game Boy was being created and stuff. But one of the reasons that they weren't that worried about being behind technologically is that they neither knew nor cared what Sharp was doing in Tokyo or whatever else was going on up there.
Yeah.
It was kind of almost a stubbornness to it, a kind of Kyoto attitude that I thought was quite interesting.
It's a very strange city. It's a very weird city because like Osaka's just right over there, and it's like very old money, very very traditional, and very nice. There's like but it's smaller than you think it is, and it's also just like weirdly old fashioned in this very specific way.
Yeah, there's like a direct analogous relationship for me between Kyoto and Osaka and my hometown Edinburgh and Glasgow
Hmm.
in Scotland. Like, Edinburgh is the stuffy, lots of old money, seat of royalty, ancient, very pretty. All the tourists go there. And then Glasgow is much cooler,
Yeah.
more people, lots more, huge variance in, people's income and stuff, but
Yes.
brilliant culture
The
and great sense of
Philadelphia.
humor.
The Philadelphia of these various countries and the UK and it's UK's Philly and sorry.
um,
Yes, I think like learning, because I did live in Japan for a while, right, which I think helped a little bit with kind of trying to understand Nintendo. You know, I think I probably understand it a little bit better because I spent some time actually in Japan. But it is one thing I was wondering about was how people would feel about like a Scottish person writing history of Nintendo, especially as like it's sold in Japan, it's coming out in Japanese, and so I am a bit like, I do wonder how would be very interested to know how a Japanese expert would react to how I've kind of approached Nintendo. I guess I'll
I'm
find
gonna
out.
say right now, a great way to promote your own book would be to find somebody like that and interview them and publish that somewhere.
That
Where
would
you
be
interview
sick. I would love to
someone,
do that.
yeah, you should do it.
Yeah, I would love to.
You
I'll
could
find a
even,
Famitsu
if
journalist to do
Guardian
it.
won't take it, you can publish it on aftermath.site.
Sweet.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, you were mentioning some of the like early days of Nintendo earlier. And again, I don't think that a lot of people know that they were like a card game company in the 1800s. And like, how do they make that transition from being this like thing? And also, like, how did they last for so long? Like, there's so many questions I guess I have about that period of their history, just because I know about it vaguely. I know the outline, but I don't really understand the like the middle point of that point A to point B.
Yeah, it's actually so cool. Like, it's really interesting. I could probably have written about that forever. It's and there are people, like, of course there are people who really go real deep on this era of Nintendo's history. Like,
Hmm.
I found a guy in France who built like a one-to-one replica of Nintendo's first 1889 Kyoto headquarters in his back garden to store
Cool.
his collection of playing cards in. It's super cool. Like, he basically found blueprints from the 1800s to like get the dimensions right, and real nerdy stuff. I loved it. His name's Fabrice Heilig. And he got some guy to like in Kyoto to go and take photos of the spot where it used to be, and he imported special kinds of tile and wood and stuff so that it would be correct, or as correct as it can be. And like talking about the early days of Nintendo, like they were originally a Hanafuda company, which is like I'm trying to think of an equivalent card. Yeah, Japanese playing cards essentially. And then they became the thing that made them really big in the 20th century. First was they were the first Japanese company to do Western style playing cards, so like hearts, spades, etc. And that was under Hiroshi Yamauchi, who was the kind of badass president of Nintendo who ran it from the 40s onwards. So Yamauchi is the thing that turned it from playing card company into other stuff. So he branched out from Hanafuda into Western playing cards, and then from Western playing cards, which were really successful and made quite a lot of money for Nintendo in the 50s and 60s. But they also did a little bit of government propaganda during the war, which was interesting, and they also did some these card games that help kids to learn to read kanji, and then they got into board games and then toys. And then from toys, it was actually a pretty natural progression into games because in the 70s, electronic toys and video games were the same thing. And they were already doing light gun games. They were already doing kind of electronic board games, strange little toys. They did a baby stroller. They did, an electronic drum kit. All that stuff, it wasn't that much of a stretch to get from there with this bunch of tinkerers and engineers who, doing whatever they wanted in Kyoto, to doing like a little kind of Space Invaders-y clone thing, to then ending up making Donkey Kong and becoming a game company. But I think Yamauchi, who was the guy who kind of led that transformation, he didn't care about games. He didn't like games. He just he was following the ideas, but he had a great eye for what was marketable, and that's why they ended up in games, because they were very, very marketable.
Man, I kind of like, given how I think a lot of companies in the games industry function that way still, kind of a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and I do wonder how Yamauchi would run Nintendo today if he'd be like, "Look, why aren't we doing more microtransactions? Why don't we have more subscription income?" I do wonder how he would run the company now. I find it interesting that obviously Satoru Iwata was after Yamauchi, and he led Nintendo throughout the DS and Wii era and right up to the Switch, and then he obviously very sadly died of cancer. And then the guy they've got now, there was a lot of disruption after that, and the guy they've got now used to be an accountant, like he's an accounts guy. So we had a business dude, and then we had a genius, gifted programmer who loved video games, and now we have a guy who, and not much is really known about Shuntaro Furukawa as a person. He doesn't do interviews really and stuff, and I've never met him, so I mean, I presume he is a huge gamer. Like he's worked at Nintendo all his life. I presume he must have an interest, but he's also an accountant, right? And so that's three very different types of person leading the company.
Yeah.
Over the last kind of 100 years, it's a lot of it's a lot of variance. Which
Do you think that like the kind of conservativeness of the Switch 2, maybe like that accounts for some of it? Haha, accounts for it,
I
but
do
you get the
wonder
idea.
about that. Yeah, I do wonder about that. I wonder about what the corporate strategy is now and how different it would be under Iwata right now.
Yeah.
It's obviously not a question we can ever answer, but it's something I think about quite a lot.
There's also the matter of like, you're talking about how secretive Nintendo has been about like just in general, I feel like that's a big theme throughout the history of Nintendo. And especially recently, like Stephen Totillo's been running a lot of pieces about like who actually made this particular Nintendo game, like which studio.
Yeah.
And Nintendo is always really cagey about it. And sometimes you just never find out at all. And so like, in writing this book, did you gain a clearer understanding of why they are this way? Like why do they like to keep everything behind the curtain, sometimes to like almost counterintuitive degrees?
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is it's not that uncommon in Japan for companies to be incredibly guarded. The Pokemon company is, if anything, even worse than Nintendo in terms of like how nervous it is about IP, and how like they're just very not transparent about development processes at all. I don't think Game Freak's given an interview to anyone or had any kind of insight since the early 2000s.
Well, today they did have. I'm joking. They did have.
Oh, hang on, wait. What's it called? What's the game they're making for
Beast,
Xbox?
whatever.
What is it?
Yeah.
Princess Mononoke, the video game. What is it called? I can't remember. I've already forgotten the title. But they have actually made a few games outside of Pokemon, haven't they?
It is weird when they get allowed to do that, but it's
Yeah.
Beast
do,
of
like, Pocket Card Jockey or
Reincarnation.
whatever. Yeah. They just they can do whatever they want. They must have more money than God, surely. But yeah, so I think partly it's a business secrets thing, right?
Yeah.
And partly it's like it's a culture thing. But the thing is, I actually think most of Nintendo's developers quite happy to chat. It really amazes me that when Chris Kohler was writing his book about Japanese games in, I think, the early 2000s or late 90s, he just emailed Miyamoto. Like, he just sent an email to Miyamoto, and Miyamoto replied, and they had a big chat, and that's what's in the book. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Just guess
You
his
could.
email address and then
It
just
is
give it a
fuck.
try.
It's fucked up how often just send an email works.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
like
it used to work for
crazy.
me all like, yeah, in like the early days, like when because I
Yeah, like in the
started writing about
90s or
games in
whenever. Because, yeah, times
2005.
have definitely
Yeah,
changed a lot.
yeah. I mean, Christ, if you send me an email, I never even see it because of the sheer volume of
Yeah,
email now.
yeah.
But in 2005, 2006, very often, like if I got a cool little scoop or something, it was just because I emailed a guy.
Mhm.
It was the way. It was the way. For a long time, it was a great journalistic skill.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that they mention in kind of a lot of the copy for your book is that it contains private conversations with the likes of Shigeru Miyamoto. Did you like do a specific interview with him for this book, or is it just more like, you know, from your history of having interviewed him at various other points?
I did. So basically, it took me, I think, 3 or 4 years to arrange an interview with Miyamoto.
Wow.
And it was crazy. And it was like sometimes it would be like it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. Oh, it's not happening, and then it would go quiet for ages, and so on, and so on. And it was very difficult to organize. And when we did do it, we were doing a cover story for the Guardian's culture section as well.
Hmm.
So the main kind of big interview that I have with Miyamoto that features a lot in the book is from 2023 in October 2023 when I went over there. And then he also did a smaller round of interviews when the Nintendo Museum opened in 2024,
Hmm.
the year after. So, but the big conversation that I got where we spent like 2 hours talking at Nintendo HQ was in 2023, and it was it was for the cover story for the newspaper, and then also it was for the book, and it was really cool. It was a great conversation. Because the thing about Miyamoto is he's an old dude. He was
Yeah.
71, I think, when I spoke to him, and he kind of goes off on these random tangents, and it's kind of
Excellent.
like it is like listening to like a beloved older uncle or granddad just like rabbiting on about something. But he's also happens to be the dude who he's Mario's dad, and it was really cool to speak to him, and he gets really into the like nitty gritty nerdy stuff. Like he got really excited talking about the placement of the buttons on the GameCube controller. That was a
Oh
good
yeah.
20 minutes, and it's just so cool to. I love listening to people talk about their nerdy shit. Obviously, this is the job I do. My whole job is
What?
listening to people talk about their nerdy thing,
Yeah.
and
What did he
listening
say
to
about the
Miyamoto do it's cool.
buttons? What did he say about the buttons on the GameCube controller?
Well, so they were trying to do. Well, at first they were wanted to do like a kind of similar central stick to the
Mhm.
to the N64,
Mm.
but he was talking about how they had the four buttons, and they were all lots of different. You know how the GameCube has that massive A button,
Yep.
and then like the strange little kidney bean shaped ones and the teeny little B. So for a while, like the A was like it was, and the other ones were on different parts of the controller. And he was talking about how they had them like SNES style, all the same size. And he was like, no, we're gonna have one massive A button, and then all the other ones are gonna like come around it and kind of encircle it in this beautiful way. And then they started moving it up and down the controller. Like he's a real product designer.
Mhm.
Really cares about that stuff. And another thing he got really exercised talking about and how much fun he had with it was the N64 controller's analog stick and the way it has that little hexagonal guideline around it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because he was finding people couldn't push up or they weren't quite getting up and coming up with that little hexagon around the analog stick. He was just so pleased when that worked. He was like, yes, this is great.
It's very arcade. Certain arcade sticks are like that, kind of gated a little bit in a weird way. I don't know. It's fascinating. I love when the thing that the person really wants to talk to is something extremely specific that you weren't expecting. That's my favorite sensation.
But
Mhm.
that was what's so good because you go. I mean, it's quite difficult. You're preparing to interview someone like Miyamoto, and you just like the questions are so big that you have, and you have so many of them. And so you have to really follow what they want to talk. Because if you're like, hey, what were the early days of Nintendo like? And he's like, oh,
Mhm.
it was pretty cool, I guess. Because
Right,
it was
right. You're not really gonna
stuff.
get like good specifics from that. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes some people you can interview and they're just they're happy to rabbit on, and you can just let them
Yeah.
kind of guide you
Those are
where
called
you have to be.
yappers.
Yeah,
We love a
exactly.
yapper.
I am
Yappers are
one
great
myself, so
interviewees, although the only problem with yappers in interviews is because you identify them immediately. First question, you already know what kind of interview you have. And if it's a yapper and like you have a packed day, you're like, okay, we are not going to get to all my questions because every response that they give me is going to last 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to deal with that. And also, they're gonna go on all these tangents where I'll be like,
Mm.
okay, that's fun, but I can't use that. So I'm just sort
Yeah.
of sitting here nodding politely, being like, okay,
The
cool,
Yeah, like there's a
good.
the
difference between like
best
a conversation and an interview, isn't there? Like a good
Yes,
conversation and a good interview are two completely different things.
the best
and
one
they
of
can be
those
similar, but yeah,
the best one of those for me is still John Carmack. We asked him one question, he talked for 23 minutes straight.
yeah. Well, I mean, I used to like with John Carmack. I used to go to QuakeCon every year when I lived in Dallas, and
Yeah.
so I'd attend his like now legendary, just like he had his own, I guess, just like annual talk, and the idea was they would just put him on a stage and let him talk about anything for as long as he wanted to,
It's true.
and these would last for like 5+ hours. He
Wow.
would
He's
just, yeah, because he would
I
just
can
like
believe it.
yeah, he'd just go and just string thoughts together. And like they were often interesting, but a lot of it was also technical nitty gritty stuff. So it was like, I do not understand what you're saying a lot of stuff about rasterizing. I don't know what you really are referring to right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He
He just like
talked
go deep
yeah.
dive into like id Tech 5, all that stuff.
He talked to us for 23 minutes about display latency, and then that video ended up getting in the ZeniMax lawsuit. Somebody had ripped it and put it on YouTube, and they cited the YouTube rip, not us, for in the ZeniMax
Oh,
lawsuit because he was talking about display latency in VR, and he was correct because it was like all the stuff he was talking about was shit he was fucking around with that is like now the bedrock for VR. You know what I mean? Just like the
My
stuff
God.
that you need to figure out was just like, yeah, display latency is really important when you're doing VR, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh yeah, this is like gold. They fucking, everybody built like careers around the shit he was saying for us for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's the
uh,
danger of being a yapper.
what I'm hearing is that we should put John Carmack and Shigeru Miyamoto in conversation with one another and just sort of see what emerges.
Me and Mo would just sit there like he
He'd be very
would be
polite,
waiting
yeah.
for, yeah, he would be waiting for a, I think something that so when I was talking to other creatives at Nintendo,
Mhm.
there are these two guys, Hisashi Nogami and Shinya Takahashi, who are like one generation below Miyamoto, so still pretty, in
Yeah,
their
yeah, they've
late
been
50s,
around.
I think now. Yeah, they've been around. They've been at Nintendo a long time. They worked on Wave Race 64 and stuff, and I interviewed the two of them, and they were funny. They had a great rapport with each other. And I interviewed them at the V&A Museum in London because they did a really really good and unusually good exhibition about video games a few years back. Um, and yeah, when I was talking to them, I said, "So what is it like working with Miyamoto?" And they were like, uh, they were kind of like, "Yeah, he's not generous with praise," was the way they put it. And then you kind of see that a lot. It comes kind of out when you ask about it. People do a little shift in their chair. They're like, "Oh," and I think that he was known for sort of turning up and just sort of lurking and like watching over people's
Mhm.
shoulders at what they were doing, what they were playing, what they were making, and he just like do that wordlessly. He also had a habit of just wandering up to people throughout the N64 and beyond era. He'd just wander up to someone, grab them basically by the collar, and be like, come here," sit them down in front of whatever he was making, and be like, "Play," and then he'd just sit there and watch. And like, can you imagine being told by Shigeru Miyamoto, and then he's sitting there and kind of looking at where the friction points are,
Uh-huh.
and then he'd just like dismiss them and go back to work. And at one point, Nogami, I think, was like, "I have never once been praised by Mr. Miyamoto." And then
um,
Takahashi kind of patted him on the back and was like, "He's very pleased with you. He says so to everybody else." It was,
Just not to
it
you.
was a
Just
really
not
fun.
to you.
Yeah,
yeah, never to you. Not even on his
yeah,
deathbed will he ever tell you
yeah.
that he's pleased with you.
I know
Like
it's
Um,
just, I
unhealthy.
liked.
Yeah.
in that context, were people afraid to like give Miyamoto honest feedback, or did he only watch? He didn't ask for like, yeah. So what do you think?
I get the impression he's the kind of guy who is his own harshest critic, and he would
Hmm.
not be. He's not a big ego. A lot of game developers of his standing are big egos. If he had been,
Yeah.
a British game developer, he would have left Nintendo after his first big hit, started his own company. He'd have been Peter Molyneux, basically.
Right. Right.
Um, I mean, that's obviously not entirely, but he would have started his own company and probably,
And
been a
made
figurehead and
good
been,
games.
yeah, chatting to, yeah, maybe he would have made good games, but,
Yeah.
chatting to the press, everything a bit like that. He'd have made loads, he'd probably be multi-millionaire. And
Mhm.
instead he stayed at Nintendo. I mean, he probably is incredibly wealthy. I have no idea.
I would have to imagine.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, surely. But he stayed at the company. He hasn't like flounced off and started his own studio, where most game developers who'd had hits as big as him would. But
Yeah.
because he's not that kind of ego guy, um, I get the impression that like he would welcome feedback and criticism to the same extent that he would dish it out. And actually, that's something that is I discovered is common at Nintendo. Like when they were making Splatoon, that was the one out of 50 to 70 prototypes that everybody on that team made, and every single person on like the Zelda team or whatever team, they have the experience of standing up, presenting something, and everyone going, "Nah, rubbish, don't like it, move on." And they also have the experience of having an idea accepted and then integrated, and so that gives people a kind of like rapid creative iteration. It's why things like Super Mario Wonder, I think, are so fizzy. You know, there's just so many ideas in there. But it also means that the bad ones don't make it through. You just generate so much that the best stuff is what ends up in a 2D Mario. I mean, sorry, a 3D Mario these days. And I think that so everyone at the company has to be pretty comfortable, I think, with not having a big ego about their ideas, and also with dishing out like really good and constructive criticism to everybody else in development. I don't know how unusual that is, but I do get the impression that it's usually more hierarchical than it is at Nintendo.
Right. Yeah, let's see. Speaking of just Nintendo in general, the other thing that I've seen in the copy for your book repeatedly is, that you've gotten to actually travel to Nintendo HQ, making you one of the few like Western journalists who has had the privilege. What is that place like?
It's a big white building in the south of Kyoto. It's a big office block, And I think we couldn't figure out exactly how many people had been in there in the last 20 years, but we think it's fewer than 5. So I was, and the thing is, like, I truly wasn't like fangirling it up. I was excited, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't like super overwhelmed and thrilled to be at Nintendo HQ. I was interested, super interested.
Yeah.
And then it's just as well, because when you walk in there, it's just an office, and they have like a completely white, like completely featureless white entrance reception area. And the only thing that indicated that Nintendo was there was that on the receptionist desk there was a little basket of Mario plushies. And then I wasn't allowed basically anywhere. I was allowed only on the ground floor, and I was kind of ferried from meeting room to meeting room on the ground floor. And at one point, I was like, I'm going to go find a bathroom, and I ran around that ground floor trying to like find anything interesting. And the only thing I found was like on one of the company kind of theaters, like the presentation rooms, whatever, was a tiny little Donkey Kong sprite in the frosted glass. That was the only thing I found that
And you
indicated
like
it was
looked at
anything
that for
other.
a moment, and then they shouted, "Guards, seize her!" And then that was it.
Yeah, it was like a maze game.
Uh,
Always escaping the monster at the end of the corridor. But yeah, it's a surprisingly featureless office. I like to believe that like upstairs, perhaps it's more interesting to look at. But then if you look at footage of Inside Nintendo from the 90s, which the BBC had, the BBC got in there. It is just an office, man. They're all in cubicles and wearing shirts and ties, and you know, there was Miyamoto and Satoru Iwata differed on this. Iwata was like really keen on having a proper business dress code at Nintendo.
Yeah.
And Miyamoto was like, I don't care. I don't give a shit about that. Like, I'm not going to do that.
I respect
And
it.
so, yeah, so I don't know what people even go to work dressed in. Do you know what I mean? Like, I imagine a lot of people are in the standard salaryman, suit and tie situation, and maybe some aren't. But yeah,
Iwata was always
you
a
don't get
blazer
much of an
guy.
insight. Yeah, yeah. Miyamoto's
Yeah.
a big blazer guy.
Oh, okay.
Iwata was like an immaculate suit guy.
Yeah, he was always like to the nine. Like you feel like he would fall
Like,
asleep in a suit.
yeah,
Just,
like
just
tie clip.
yeah.
Like just immaculate.
Yeah.
And then Aonuma's got this kind of big mop of untidy
Yeah.
graying hair now, and like wears cardigans. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's not, it doesn't give you so. I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, it's an awesome thing to have done. I mean, it's really cool. I'm really pleased that I got to go actually be in that building. It was a it was a career highlight moment, and interviewing Miyamoto there was awesome. It was really cool, but equally, it didn't give me much of an insight into like what Nintendo's like that building. It's just an office.
I do realize that of the three of them, like Aonuma's the closest to Triforce T-shirt cargo pants.
Yes, closest. Yeah, he's. I got the impression that he, because the lead on the Zelda team is Fujibayashi now.
Yeah.
And he was saying when they were making Tears of the Kingdom, he would know if it was good because Aonuma sat like next to him in the cubicle of four opposite, and Aonuma would just be like exclaiming to himself, just like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, and he'd like be talking out loud constantly while he played. So it's like granddad Twitch streamer vibes from Aonuma, which I thought was very cute.
Yeah, I mean, from writing this book about kind of the history of Nintendo, And talking about who's in charge of various series now and stuff like that, because it feels like we've done in the time that at least the three of us have been alive a few
Mm.
generational leaps in terms of who's
Mm.
running a series, the design philosophy, and everything like that. So, like in writing this book about the past, what have you been able to glean about maybe the future or where Nintendo feels like it's headed?
There were two things. The first is the intergenerational nature of Nintendo,
Mhm.
which is unique. There's no other, and this is both inside and in the market, right? So in the market, Nintendo is now intergenerational because we all grew up with Nintendo. We're having children now who are also playing Nintendo. I don't think really yet many other game companies have achieved that sort of intergenerational appeal. Um, because most companies just it's last year's product, they just chuck it behind the shoulder and it doesn't
Right.
necessarily have that long
Compared to
long
like
life.
Sony, like Naughty Dog did like Crash Bandicoot and then did stuff like Uncharted and Last of Us, like
Yeah,
Jack. Like
and like you know
there's
what
not continuity. It's not like all Mario all the way through every generation.
No, and also people. I think Sony really underestimates how much people loved Crash Bandicoot. Like people really
Yeah,
loved that
right.
game.
Mm.
They have a huge attachment to it. So that intergenerational nature of the market
Mhm.
is something that I think will kind of safeguard Nintendo for a while. But also they have intergenerational teams, right? Like if
Mhm.
you are the guy, the newest guy making Mario, you are sitting in the same team as Takashi Tezuka, who made the first Mario. And that is the case. That is the case on every team. It's always a mix of people who've literally been there for decades, maybe made the very first game in that series,
Mm.
and then
Mhm.
also Nintendo's internal documentation. If you are struggling with a technical problem, you can go ask the guy who made that console. He's over there. You know this like, and all the documentation is like apparently super tight. Like it's all
Mhm.
they've got incredible documentation of their own work. Um, and so you're having this intergenerational development process as well, which I think is a key to why their games keep being so good.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
because there's both the insight and the kind of institutional knowledge and the spirit of the game has remained kind of like Zelda. I think really feels sort of the same. The core of it is the same as it has been for decades, which is how do they do that? It's because they keep the same people on it. But then you also have this freshness and you have new people and you have very talented younger people who are very core parts of the teams. So yeah,
Mhm.
that intergenerational nature of both its products and its teams and its audience, I think that's the thing that really defines Nintendo now and
Mhm.
that will probably define it in future. It's gonna become like a Disney kind of situation, although hopefully not evil. We will see.
Well,
I did forget how long like Fujibayashi had been working on this stuff. Like he's looking. Like, I was like, oh wait, he directed Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. Like that's
Yeah,
crazy.
he was the
That's
director on
fucking
those games. Yeah, and
yeah. Like he's
approached him from
been
Capcom.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like the new director of Zelda has been working on these games for decades himself. You know, and
Yeah.
it's
He's
very
like
interesting that.
53.
Yeah,
yeah.
and they're seen as spring chickens because there's Aonuma and there's Miyamoto. They're still there. But yeah, you have and when you first start to see a Nintendo developer's name, like when you first start to see them cropping up, maybe in a Nintendo Direct or whatever, they have probably been there 10 years or more
Mhm.
by the time that happens. So I think that kind of talent development is pretty solid. Like they seem to do a pretty good job of bringing people up and not
Mhm.
just keeping it with the established generation. They seem to do a great job of bringing people up and kind of
Mm,
keeping the company like moving, which I think is positive for its future. I'm
yeah,
hoping.
definitely.
Yeah. Although, with that in mind, and here's something that maybe you can't necessarily answer because you don't know what's going on inside people's heads. But do you think that that tendency to stick around, well into old age, stems from a desire to keep things like because, they take pride in their work, they care a lot about it? Or do you think that they're afraid to let go, that they're afraid to completely take their hand off the wheel because they don't necessarily entirely trust that things will keep working the way that they should if they leave and finally, go enjoy retirement?
I do think there's an element of that probably for quite a lot of Nintendo's old guard. I know that like Miyamoto took a long time to very slowly withdraw from game development. He's not involved in games anymore. He does the theme parks and the movies and stuff. He's become a student of film scripts because he's trying to understand how to get the best out of Nintendo's film partnerships and stuff. But that was a slow process. And I imagine Nintendo's apart from anything else, can you imagine what would happen to Nintendo's stock price if Miyamoto retired?
Oh yeah, no,
You
it
know,
just
so I do wonder the extent to which people are sticking around because they kind of have to for business reasons. like especially the old guard. But then they do seem to really enjoy their lives. Like, I mean, obviously, I'm not. You see these people on the product cycles. You see them every 3-4 years. But every time I've never interviewed a Nintendo developer that doesn't have like the light in their eyes.
That is,
Sometimes you
yeah.
interview them and they're like, oh, they've clearly been through it.
Yeah.
I also think this does, like, Nintendo fans are really rabid. Like, I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, like, there's a reason why, like, when you talk about like emulation online and being like, hey, it'd be nice to like be able to, and they're like, you shut up, a bunch of them will just come out of the woodwork and be they're like loyal, like to a degree that I
Yeah.
don't think, and I think that loyalty comes from a really organic place of like, there is, say what you will about it, there is nobody doing it like them. You know what I mean? To this
Yeah.
day. And like that means something in a time when like what games are feels like it's never been less certain. Like to have this island of certainty is like really powerful for a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the nostalgia power too. The thing that you loved when you were 9 is objectively the best thing forever for a lot of
Yeah.
people. And
But
I
it's
think
not
that's
just
behind
that.
a lot of the. It's not just that, but that's a part of
Yeah,
why
it
the
is, yeah.
emotional attachment comes in. Because it's not just I love these games. I think they're really neat, and it's not just that. It's an emotional attachment that people have to Nintendo, and sometimes I think that does. I mean, I feel like I think it's maybe just because I've been working as a journalist for so long, but I don't feel like I have that like emotion. I'm very attached to Nintendo, but I don't have I would never feel instinctively called to its defense, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In the way that sometimes, like on online, when anything, or even when Metroid Prime 4 wasn't great in the end, like there was a lot of like vociferous pushback. But then this is everywhere in the game. That fandom in general now has become like this. I feel that
Yeah.
I remember like on
Yeah.
the
Fandoms are
playground in the
almost like
90s.
these. Yeah. Fandoms like defense forces.
Yeah,
And it's like all these
exactly.
people,
Yeah.
yeah, as you said, feel called to like stand up for the thing that they consider almost as like part of their identity, when in reality it's just like a brand or an object
Yeah.
or
It's
even
a
like a
product.
toy. Yeah.
Yeah, like Nintendo's, it's a really cool toy. Like video games in general are super cool toys, right?
Yeah.
And like, but I remember like even in the 90s, like the sheer vociferousness of the it was Nintendo versus Sega in the UK.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Same
Nintendo
over
was
here
like,
back in the 90s.
yeah, and then like PlayStation became like Nintendo's actually never been all that huge in the UK. It was always PlayStation when I was growing up. And it being the Nintendo nerd was like unusual. It was
PlayStation
nobody cared.
PlayStation feels like a very UK thing to just like, I remember the advertising felt very like designer, like it felt like, you fucking what, man? Like just like it felt very like
And then like a girl with an alien head and some just
guy,
some creepy back alley in a rubbish
yeah,
in
magazine, bleach bypass, Ewan McGregor ass looking guy, and it's like he's looking at a
Dark Side
GameCube.
Y2K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a fondness for like UK era PS1 ad stuff because it was always you'd be like, oh, the guy from made Zone of Interest directed that, like that kind of shit would happen. I don't think he did, but
There
like
was
he's very very like,
yeah. There was this vein of 90s surreal British humor that was kind of on TV and in films that also bled right through to the advertising kind of
yeah.
approach. It was cool. You know what? The PlayStation 2 ads were awesome. But like I really can't overstate the extent to which Sony absolutely dominated in the UK. Like there may as well not have been other consoles for most of the time that I was growing up. They really were. And Nintendo was a kind of nerdy connoisseur's choice for a long time, and it seems strange to say now, but it definitely was. Like the DS, I remember I was the only person I knew who had a GameCube, and then a few people I knew had DSs, and then everyone had a Wii. But certainly pre that point, it was so. I mean, Sony was so much cooler. Like we got to admit it, it was a lot cooler.
I think
Yeah.
it's
Well,
Their
like,
Sony's
branding was a
always
lot.
had that going for it.
can you
The cool
make,
factor is
yeah.
honestly, the only platform with cool factor ever has been, at least of the current like three, has been Sony, because Xbox
Oh,
has always
maybe
been
Xbox
dorky
has
as
never been
shit.
cool. No, it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
never.
and Nintendo is like fun and family friendly, but doesn't really lend
Yeah,
itself to be
approachable.
cool. Yeah,
No,
I,
I don't
I
think cool is the word for it. Fun is the word.
I do think
yeah,
that like there's an element of like the PlayStation is in many ways also the Amiga of its era in certain ways, because it's like, were people making weird music on it for some reason? Like was like, were you making like garage and like fucking jungle on there for some reason?
Yeah, the thing that was really, because obviously in the US, Atari really dominated like gaming in the 80s. And then we didn't really have that. And instead in the UK and Europe, it was all these weird little home computers like the, the Spectrum, the BBC Micro, and the Amstrad. I wasn't around for this. Someone will say I'm getting this wrong. But all the weird little home computers that people were physically typing. It was very Commodore. It was all very different. The scene was very different. Atari wasn't massively a thing. The NES wasn't really a thing in Europe at all. Like no one had a NES, and instead we had these weird little computers. And I think that kind of fed into something about Sony's kind of slightly strange, garagey, grungy aspect, like appealed to that gamer culture a bit more than Nintendo's and Sega's kind of bright, family friendly. Well, Sega was cool. People had a Mega Drive, man.
Yeah, they were cool for the time. Sega was cool to teenagers.
Yeah,
I
teenagers
do.
who were trying to be cooler than Nintendo specifically.
I do love whenever you talk to
bar.
somebody who grew up in a British milieu of gaming, because they're like, "What, you never played Barmy's Burgers for the ZX Spectrum?" And you're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah, I get this because I did grow up on Nintendo. Like I had a SNES, and then I've always been a console guy. I fucked around with PCs for a bit when I was a teenager, but other than that, always been a console guy. But then my partner was like a proper Spectrum kid, and so I know
So to
I have all this
speak.
secondhand knowledge. I've had all these secondhand knowledge of all these weird British computers, and he'll call me over and be like, "You got to see this," and it's like a sort of isometric 3D thing where you are a floating eye.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I'd have also thought that rocked in the 80s. That's really cool.
Games used to be better. They've been falling off for our entire lives.
Ever since Barmy's Burgers.
Yes.
And
on the
Hall
Z
of
Spectrum.
Things. Sorry, I just got I got the wiki of games out. It's just
Hall of Things.
Hall of
there's
Things.
There's one that's just called Fred.
I love
Yeah.
it. Horace Goes Skiing. Horace Goes Skiing. That's a real game.
Horace and the Spiders. Potty Painter.
That sounds like a 70s glam rock album.
Checkered Flag. I could, yeah. What is it? Beachhead. Yeah.
There's one called Panopticon.
That
was
sense.
quite famous. Jet Set Willy. Jet Set Willy.
Oh, fuck. That is the most
also a real
British
That
game.
doesn't sound real at all.
Steve Davis Snooker.
Do you know what they call Jet Set Willy in the
name.
States? Was it Jetpack? I think they called it Jetpack in the States, which is funny.
Miss Mop with Mrs. Mop with two P's.
Okay, so we were talking about your book's name earlier and how it's different in the US and UK. Why doesn't your book not have one of these, crazy, why does it have a totally different name? Why is it just a slight subtitle tweak?
I know.
Would have been way better.
I should have gone more 80s homebrew.
Yeah, exactly. Should have just called your book
anyway.
Fred.
Yeah.
That's it.
Just not even Super Nintendo Fred, just Fred. Yeah.
Yeah, Fred. Speaking of regrets, I do want to know, did you have a moment where you finished the book, it was going to print, and you thought of anything where you're like, I should have included that?
I had to cut quite a lot because I was trying to keep, the publisher wanted it to be quite a svelte read. And I agree. I think a lot of people who buy this book are going to be people who played Nintendo as kids, haven't necessarily kept up with it. People who have a curiosity about games, as much as it's it is obviously it's for the gamers, it is. But I do think that there's going to be a large chunk of people who don't necessarily want to know all the ins and outs of how Star Fox's 3D technology worked, which is a shame because I love that.
I want to.
Right. They were dissolving boards in baths of acid to try and figure out how 3D tech worked. I mean, it's just that's cool to me.
Cool.
And yeah, so that's stuff that I had to cut because my publishers were like, this is too nerdy. And then there was so the whole Star Fox story, which involved a bunch of British teenagers, hacker teenagers, being flown over to Kyoto and becoming staff at Nintendo, like some of the first Western staff at Nintendo. I thought that was super cool, and it did get cut because it didn't quite fit the narrative of the book. It didn't fit neatly in between any other chapter, but that's some bonus content I'm holding for the paperback. I'm gonna be we're getting Star Fox.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so that was a regret. I wish that the Star Fox story was still in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the Switch 2 was announced seconds before this went to print.
Yeah.
And I was cool. I did manage to get it kind of in there when it needed to be, but I do also think the Switch 2 is a natural point at as I was saying, this generation of hardware is the last one that all these guys who built Nintendo will be working on, and I felt like it was kind of a natural cutoff point. So I wasn't too worried about not getting much about the Switch 2 in there.
Well, let's see. With every author, I of course have to ask the question to which they do not know the answer. What's your next book going to be about?
Okay, I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to do
Okay.
a series of. I want to do some kids' books about games,
Oh.
and I want them to be the equivalent of the magazines that I read in the 90s that made me feel like, there were other people out there who were smart and at least a tiny little bit cool, and
Yeah.
who, and they, could tell me about games. So I don't think there's much like, if you're kids, my kids are 9 and 6. If they want to know about games, obviously they can ask me. Most kids don't have a games journalist parent that they can ask
Right.
about stuff, and instead they have YouTube. And I just, I think
Mm.
that a lot of people would maybe benefit from having an option of like a
Yeah.
book, a series of books you can buy for
From
your kids that's like fun and informed and, you know, has a kind of, I guess like an almost like, an avuncular tone, like
Yeah.
I would love
They
that
might
to be an
use the
option that
word
you can buy.
avuncular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many parents would be like, oh, my kid likes games. What the hell am I going to get them for Christmas? Tell you what, there's these books. That's not a screen. I will get these books.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of kids' books are also like books about games, kids' books about games specifically. They're like obviously like no disrespect to the people who write them, but they're kind of they're cobbled together based on Minecraft or based on Fortnite, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
these like Bookazini annually things that come out, and I'm like, I'd love to see something a little bit more in depth and that maybe has a bit more meat to it. So I'd like to write that. That would be a cool project for me.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Well, with all that out of the way, I think it is time for us to move over to the mailbag, where we answer reader questions for a nominal fee. That nominal fee is people subscribing to our website for $10 per month, which you can do at said website, which is aftermath.site.
It's a good
With that
website.
said, it is.
I can say objectively
very
it's a good website.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
seriously, it is. It's a good website.
Thank you.
Yeah, not to put words in your mouth, but you could say objectively it's one of the best websites of all time, maybe. Who knows?
I would say, yeah, I would say so.
There we go.
Trumpian
All right,
delivery.
that is author Keza MacDonald saying that
How dare
Aftermath is
you.
one of the best websites of all time. All right. Pretty quick mailbag this week, so let's get to it. From Jack. What's the coolest shirt you've seen in Animal Crossing?
I saw one the other day that somebody had put like, what's the collective noun for badgers? Like, the shirt was just interlocking badgers. There was a whole cardigan-y jumper situation with like a whole lot of badgers on it, and I thought that must have taken ages to make. And I'm still thinking about it, and now I'm thinking about what the collective noun for badgers is.
Yeah, I know.
Or clan.
Or clan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clan of badgers. Yeah, so
Set.
badger clan
CET.
cardigan.
Yeah. Just an interesting word that I don't know
Don't
necessarily the
badgers live
meaning
in
of.
sets? Isn't that their dens? Anyway, that was a cool Animal Crossing shirt. I also saw somebody who'd done, an obvious one, but it was really well done, like a really nice Majora's Mask. Like it was tasteful. Yeah, that was a cool one that I saved to my tailor.
Yeah. I feel like when I was playing like New Horizons or whatever, I just like made really stupid shirts where like I would draw, like a dumb face that you could put on like a piece of paper in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And just wore that around, and it looked
So
like
I was
absolute
mostly
garbage.
making things that were jokes for my animals to wear, because if you give them something, they then immediately have
Yeah,
to
they'll put it
wear
on. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was usually just making things that made me laugh, that were
Nah,
stupid to give my creatures.
that animal's face with like a big X through it, so they
Yeah.
wear it.
Dumb stuff like that.
Yeah, it says like loser underneath it.
Yeah.
Stupid nerd.
I'm with stupid. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that one Garfield screenshot where it's like Garfield looking at a no
Oh, yeah.
Garfield thing.
Yeah, exactly. Who's this for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like it was funny because before Animal Crossing was online, for some reason everyone still made all these, even though you couldn't upload them, they couldn't go anywhere. Everyone still spent ages making these stupid designs that only they would ever really see. It's just something in us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the nature of play, right? We play
Mhm.
largely for our own benefit, I think.
Yep. I think so
Also,
too, I'd
just wanted to
agree.
point out, Drew in chat said that they pre-ordered your book on Bookshop, mostly to give to their teenage kid. So there you go.
Oh,
Nice.
incredible!
Yeah.
Thank you. My 9-year-old did read it actually. I think he
Oh.
skimmed some of it, but he read it, so it's I think an intelligent kid or teenager would really enjoy it. I hope if they're a Nintendo fan.
Now wait, what was his review of it? What did he think?
Well, he actually retained a surprising amount of information from it. I think I just
I mean,
underestimated
kids.
the
That's
massive.
because kids' brains aren't all messed up yet. They
Yeah,
still have like
no.
full storage capacity.
No internet yet. That's what
Yeah.
that is.
Like a fresh
but
SSD.
Exactly.
No defragging required. Yeah, he was really he enjoyed it. But he was also, I think, because I was basically like so stressed out for an entire year writing it, and I was disappearing off to my office and just like and they didn't have access to me for long stretches of time. So I think he was just like, "What have you abandoned me for? I want to see what
Aw.
it is. What's the product of this?" I think he thought it was pretty cool.
That's fair.
Nice. All right. From Jabberwocky. Was there anything you learned about Nintendo that was particularly surprising during book research?
Ooh, I think we've touched on quite a lot of it. I didn't
Well,
actually
let's.
know that the I didn't know where Samus Aran's name come from. Do you know that?
No, I don't think so.
So it was because the guy who was like the director on it, he was trying to name Samus after Pele, but he got Pele's full name completely wrong. So
Huh.
yeah, so it was supposed to be like Pele's name, his surname, or the other names where he was trying to make it that, but he just got it so completely wrong that it ended up as Samus Aran. So it was a complete fail. That's why Samus Aran is called Samus Aran. I didn't know that. That was a
Yeah.
cool little
Now,
fact.
how do you get that wrong in this particular way?
I guess not having Google.
Man,
Like, I think just guessed.
that's crazy. Yeah, either that or the concept of AI traveled back in time for one search
Yeah,
and then
just startle
hallucinated
it
on the
completely.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also in the credits to Metroid is the name of three restaurants, which were the three closest late night restaurants to Nintendo HQ that they all would eat at constantly. That was another cool. I always wondered what those three things were. Turns out they were restaurants, so that was cool.
Hell yeah. Um, all right. And then last question for today's uncharacteristically brief mailbag from Mystic Eddie T. As gaming journalists, what's the wildest rabbit hole you've fallen down or fallen into while doing research for a story?
Oh boy, my rabbit hole for this book specifically was trying to track down Steve Wiebe from King of Kong.
Mhm.
You guys know that movie, right?
Yes.
I mean, of course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was trying to track down Steve because I just really wanted to speak to him about Donkey Kong. And yeah, it took me a while and it was like a lot of and then eventually I ended up sort of sending yeah. Again, in the end this was a send an email story in the end.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, I basically everything else in my life went on pause for like 4 days while I tracked down this guy. It was completely couldn't think about anything else apart from speaking to this guy about Donkey Kong. I didn't even end up using most of it, but it was just really cool to finally find him and then be able to talk to him. Um, and then there was a really cool story on Aftermath recently about like the person with Nicole Carpenter's name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
That's
was
a
a wild
great
one.
rabbit hole. Wonderful
Yep.
rabbit hole story. I enjoyed every second of it. I could imagine myself in that position the
That
whole
was a
way through.
great story. Sorry, not to toot our own horn, but wow, that was just like it
A
was like
really
a
awesome story.
that was like a sleep paralysis demon dream. That was like great.
So good. What about
Yeah,
you guys? What's like a weird rabbit? I mean, Chris, you do nothing but go down weird
That's
yeah.
rabbit
You
holes.
literally
do
my
only rabbit
job.
holes.
A lot of them
Yeah.
are actually things that I like have never been able to confirm, and thus was like I wrote like half a story about. I've been
Mhm.
trying to track down this one British like house DJ or like this one guy who produced this one house track that's like related to an anime for like 6 months and just keep like I talked to the Jesus Jones, I talked to all these people, and it's going to be a story eventually, but I couldn't do it. And but like I think a lot of them is like I wanted to include a Hideki Anno quote in something. There's this like famously quoted one about like giving children poison, and it took me forever to get a definitive answer about it. And even then it was like that's probably not real, it might not be real, it's hard to tell, it's in like an untranslated book that you have to go to a Neon Genesis forum to hear about,
Mhm.
and it's like that kind of shit. And
Yeah,
it's like it's like this big game of telephone where you're not sure. It's a good quote, it's just
yeah.
it sounds like it was like weirdly in the middle where it was like misattributed to not to, you know what I mean.
There are a ton of quotes from like Miyamoto and stuff that everyone kind of know. You know it, but then I would be trying to find where the hell that quote came from. And
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
look and look and look, and sometimes I would eventually find it, and it would be like a Famitsu magazine from 1997, and like I read enough Japanese that I'd be able to be like, okay, fair enough. That's at least the gist of that is correct. But then some of these quotes, like for instance, a good game is always good. A
Yep.
delayed game. That one, the one about delayed games being eventually good, but bad games being bad forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I could not find a source for that.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know
not
who
him.
said it. No,
Yeah,
I
that is
don't think it
not
was him.
Miyamoto. Yeah,
You know who it
which is
was? Was it
crazy.
someone?
I have no idea who it was, but I've seen other
Yeah, I
people
couldn't
talk about
find
this
any
online.
source.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not him. And there's a few others that, I certainly had in my head as like nailed down Nintendo wisdom that I could not find a source for
Yeah.
anywhere and ended up, so that was always fun when you're just like
Yeah.
looking at scans of Japanese games magazines from the 80s trying to figure out where the hell a quote is from.
Oh, but I
That's always
love
good.
doing that shit so much.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Sanrio story was nothing but that. I had to. It was me going through like 1973 issues of Variety, being like, oh, what this movie was in like 8-channel sound, and I can't get a DVD of it. What? It's just like crazy shit.
I've always wanted to be able to use a microfiche. Like I want to be able to research something that I have to go to an archive and use a microfiche. I've never had anything in the games world where I've had to do that, but I live in hope that I will be able to legitimately do.
I believe in
microfiche
you.
research
I think
one day.
you're gonna fiche it up.
Yeah.
Go fishing.
There we go. That's solid. Let's see. One of my favorite rabbit holes was the first story that I ever published on Aftermath, which is titled "How a Leftist Meme Account Accidentally Fooled Everyone into Believing a Famous Quote Came from Final Fantasy." And
Sweet,
that was
that's a
about the
good
quote,
rabbit hole.
if the penalty for a crime is a fine, then that law only exists for the lower class, which is not from Final Fantasy Tactics, even though it is constantly like seen in a speech bubble from that game.
Yeah,
And
because there is an
I went
account
down a
that
big
puts leftist stuff into those speech bubbles, right?
yeah. Um,
Ah.
yeah, and so like I interviewed the person who made that, and even he wasn't sure where the quote actually came from, and yeah, it was a good time. But another one that I can use right now to give people a preview of a story that's hopefully coming to the site soon, is that my personal quest for the past uh, entirety of Aftermath's existence has been to learn more about the Diablo 4 Blood PC, which, for those who don't know,
Oh yeah.
was a PC that Blizzard gave away as part of a competition for Diablo 4's second season. And the idea was that to enter the competition, you had to show Blizzard proof that you had donated blood. And then you would get, in return, if you won the competition, a PC that was allegedly cooled with actual blood.
Did it exist?
Yeah. And so at first I wanted to ask Blizzard about it because I just want to know, like, okay, how much blood? How does it work? Is it infused with blood? Is it like only a little tiny bit? Is it a significant amount? Like, do you eventually need to replace the blood? I have all these questions,
You have
like
to add
anybody
your own
would.
blood.
Right,
Yeah,
right. You have to
keep
like take
popping
a
it up.
knife and do like a ritual, that kind of a thing. But in any case, Blizzard never really got back to me meaningfully. I asked like PC makers about like the theory behind such a thing, and it never amounted to much. Yesterday, people were talking on Blue Sky about how like the winner revealed themselves a little while ago, and so I went on Reddit yesterday and DM'd that person a bunch of questions, and they've replied, and it seems like they're going to answer my questions. So I will finally
I'd
have
love to read it.
an article on the site about the contents of the Diablo Blood PC and how well it works and if it's still working, because this person's had it for like 8 months now. So yeah,
The-
we're about to
the-
learn
this,
a lot.
this is chronic journalist brain stuff. I'm really here for it. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good. Did you
yeah.
guys hear about the Queen's Golden Wii?
I vaguely recall this, but also what a great series of words. That really got Chris.
Sorry. I'm just sorry. That's
R.I.P.
No, that's like I was just thinking about that divorced from the concept, and I was like, I could see somebody saying that. It's like, you've heard of our two favorite things in the UK, Panto and the Queen's Golden Wii.
Yeah, I think it was Eurogamer. I think it might have been Chris Pratt who does People Make Games now. But this was given away, like a gold-plated Wii was given to the Queen, like presented to the Queen, at some point. And they spent ages trying to figure out what the hell happened to that golden Wii. Like, is it in the Tower of London? Is it with the crown jewels? Turns out no, it wasn't.
Man.
But that was
Wait, where
a
is it
wonderful
now?
piece. I think some guy bought it. The disappointing truth was some guy just bought it. I think some
Aw.
guy acquired it. Yeah, but it was a great rabbit hole. It was a good one. I always enjoy stories like that.
Yeah, I mean they're the best kind, like honestly. As soon as you find one, it's like, yes, this is going to be my whole
Obviously,
personality for
you,
however long it takes to get through.
well, you guys work for yourselves now, so you don't have an editor like grabbing you by the shoulders and being like, "This isn't important," which sometimes I have needed.
We
Well,
do
When I
that's the
get
sort
thing.
of
It's
really
like
do
our
pissed.
sometimes.
readership. I mean, sort of, but our
DJ for
readership
each other.
loves this kind of a thing.
Yeah, they love
And I
indulging
think that
us.
also the modern internet has become much more hospitable to long rabbit holes. You know, there are
So true.
entire genres of YouTube video that it's just I went down this rabbit hole.
So true. And it's
I
like, who cares if
played.
it's not good SEO? This rabbit hole is not a very SEO friendly rabbit hole. Doesn't matter. Those days are
Yeah.
gone.
I
Or even
played
just like,
the worst PlayStation 1 game, and I'm 25 years old, and I'm telling you more information than anybody has ever asked about it. And I'll get 3
uh-huh.
things wrong in the video.
Yeah.
Always
yeah,
three.
That
do
are like real 101 things, but everything else is perfect.
Oh, this is the fact because we all get too old and we need real jobs that like can support our families, and then everyone stops, and then you just get a new generation of This has happened, so it keeps happening
Every year.
every kind
I
of
did
10
it.
years or so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so yeah, you do end up with like this just lack of somebody being, hang on a minute, like, do you not know what the Commodore 64 was? You need someone
Yeah.
like that in your life.
For that, it's just like a lack of rigor. You've got to train your kids to be good journalists. Your
Yeah,
only
I mean,
hope.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
That's my personal responsibility to do that
You
in the
gotta
current
sit
media
in.
Yeah.
hellscape.
You gotta sit in front of the Amiga. You gotta be like, listen, this is what a demo is.
Mm. You want to type in this big code so that you can play a really, really rubbish like early racing game? Yes, you do.
yeah.
That's gaming.
They have good front ends. For
That's
those, though.
gaming.
They have really good front ends. Yeah.
All right. On that note, I think it's time to wrap up. Before we go, though, Keza, where can people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky. I think just Matt Keza is my username, but you can Google that. And at The Guardian, I do a weekly gaming newsletter called Pushing Buttons, which I really enjoy doing. So you can subscribe to that as well. And if you would like to buy the book, it's available literally everywhere. It's everywhere, which is nice. So yeah, just if you Google Super Nintendo and Keza, you will find it wherever you want. If you don't want to give money to Amazon, you don't have to.
Yeah. Don't give money to Amazon. Give it to pretty much anyone else. Um, all right. Well, this has been Aftermath Hours, the weekly podcast of aftermath.site, which, again, if you would like to subscribe, you can do that at the site itself. We'd really appreciate it. And yeah, we record this show every week at 4 p.m. ET on Thursdays. We'll do it again next week. But for now, have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.